Welcome to What's Bothering Rashi, בחקותי, the end of Chumash Vayikra, Tov Shin Pei Vov. Parsha's Behar begins with the laws of Shemitah, the 7th year, not working in the field, leaving it for the poor. Anyone who needs could come in and take. And in Perek Chafei Pasuk Yudches, it says that if you keep these rules, V'asitem et chukotai v'et mishpatai tishmeru, V'asitem otam, v'shavtem al haaretz lavetach. You will dwell, there's a promise, that you will dwell on the land securely. The next pasuk Yudches says, "V'natuna haaretz priyah," the land will give its fruits, its produce. "V'achaltem lasova," you will eat and be satisfied. "V'shavtem lavetach alea," and you will dwell securely on the land. So Rashi says on the first pasuk, "V'shavtem al haaretz lavetach," sheba'avon shmita Yisrael golim. It's the sin of Shemitah, of not keeping the laws of Shemitah, that Am Yisrael will go into galut, to exile. So the pasuk says, if you do keep V'shavtem al haaretz lavetach, then you will be able to dwell on the land securely. You won't go into exile. The next pasuk says Rashi, "V'natzana haaretz v'shavtem lavetach alea, shelo tidagu mishnat batzoret." Don't be worried of a year of drought, of famine. There's a promise. There'll be no famine. You'll have enough food. V'achaltem lasova. Next Rashi, the last Rashi in Pasuk Yutet, you will eat and be satisfied. Says Rashi, it's a special blessing that af betocha me'ayim, in your stomach there'll be a blessing, which means you'll eat a little bit and you'll be satisfied as if you ate a lot. That's what was bothering Rashi. So today we'll learn one of the famous Mefarshei Rashi, the Re'em, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi. He was born in 1450, I think, and he's one of the main and famous commentators on Rashi. So he asks, first of all, he explains, first of all, what's bothering Rashi? And he also explains why Rashi changes the order in Pasuk Yutet. Like we spoke last week, we said Rashi will always explain the words of the Pasuk the way they appear, the order they appear in. And in Pasuk Yutet, he explains first the last words, you will dwell on the land securely, and then he goes back to explain, V'achaltem lasova, you'll have a special blessing in your stomach. Why does he change the order? So the Mizrahi deals with both questions, and he says, first of all, the first question, what was bothering Rashi, is obvious. It says the same thing twice, one pasuk after the other. Pasuk Yudchet, it says, you will dwell on the land securely. And Pasuk Yutet, it says, and you will dwell securely on the land. Why does it say it again? It seems they're two different blessings. And therefore he explains, the first one is referring to not going to exile. You will stay on the land securely. And if you keep Shemitah, that's a bracha. You won't go to galut. And the second pasuk where it says you will dwell on it securely on it is referring to a different blessing. That when you're on the land, you'll be secure on the land in terms of having everything you need to sustain yourself. You'll have fruit, you'll have food, you'll be satisfied. Two separate blessings. How does Rashi know which blessing is on which pasuk? So the pasuk itself tells you. The first pasuk says, if you keep the rules of Shemitah, you will dwell on the land securely, which means that if you don't keep it, you will go into galut, you won't live here. If you don't keep the mitzvah of Shemitah, you won't be able to stay in Israel. And the second pasuk talks about the fruit, v'natna haaretz priyah, talking about the fruit. So the blessing to be secure on the land means you'll have a lot of fruit, you'll be satisfied. You'll have a special blessing to enjoy what you're eating and to be satisfied from a small amount. And it's nice to realize the difference in the Chumash itself. The first time it says you will dwell on the land securely. The second time it says you will dwell securely on the land. It makes a difference. The emphasis is on the first word. The first word in the first pasuk is you will dwell on the land securely, which means you'll stay on the land and you won't go to galut. The second pasuk, the emphasis is on secure. You will dwell securely on the land. The emphasis is that on the land you will be secure in terms of having everything you need. What do we do with the second question? Why does Rashi and Pasuk Yutet change the order of the words. So the Mizrahi says, since what was bothering Rashi was, why does it repeat in two psukim the same blessing, V'shaftem al haaretz lavetach, V'shaftem lavetach alea? Therefore, although in the second pasuk these words appear at the end of the pasuk, but he wanted to bring both Rashis together. The Rashi on pasuk Yudchet, which tells us that sitting on the land securely means you'll be able to stay here and not go to exile. And right afterwards, at the beginning of pasuk Yudchet, he says, and in this pasuk, when it says V'shaftem lavetach alea, which seems to be the same blessing, here it means, no, when you're on the land, you'll be secure in terms of having and being satisfied of what you eat. So therefore, although these words in pasuk Yutet appear at the end of the pasuk, he explained at the beginning to connect it to the previous pasuk because he wanted to bring those two sentences, you will dwell on the land securely and you will dwell securely on the land, one after the other, to explain each one, because that is what originally was bothering Rashi. And only afterwards, Rashi goes to explain the next words in pasuk Yutet, V'achaltem lasova, which appear in the middle of the pasuk. He explains V'achaltem lasova means that when you eat even a small amount, you'll be satisfied from what you eat. I'll just add, it's always important to look at the Dibur HaMaschil of Rashi. Rashi in the Dibur HaMaschil in pasuk Yutet says V'natna haaretz v'shaftem lavetach aleha. That's the Dibur HaMatchil of Rashi, which means what helps us understand what V'shavtem lavetach aleha means in the second pasuk is what it says at the beginning. Since it says, and the land will give its fruit, therefore I know that when it says you will sit on it securely, it means the fruit, you'll be satisfied from what you eat. So therefore Rashi is explaining the words in the order they appear. Although he's explaining V'shavtem lavetach aleha first, but those words are explained through the first words of the pasuk, V'natna haaretz. The first words help us explain what the end means. Therefore, he brings that as the first Rashi on the pasuk, and only afterwards he explains the middle words in the pasuk, V'achaltem lasova, which is a special blessing to be satisfied of what you eat. Have a great Shabbos.